you're highly sensitive like I am. You've taken on a lot of other people's stories and you're wearing those stories so you don't even know who you are anymore because you think this is your story and it's not your story. These are other people's stories, and we just have to move this out of the way so that you can begin to live in your own authentic self and be able to find your glimmer and your authentic light again so that you can live
Mm-hmm.
your purpose rather than living out of whatever energy's on top of your authentic energy, right?
Welcome to Sensitive Stories. This episode is for educational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for treatment with a mental health or medical professional. Let's dive in.
Lynn, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, of
Excited to be
course.
here.
Yes, so good to connect. And so
Yeah.
I want to start off by asking your HSP discovery story. How or
Yeah.
when you realized that you're highly sensitive?
Yeah. I really, really enjoy this question that you ask all of your guests that come on the podcast. It's so fascinating to hear the different ways that individuals discovered when they were HSPs. And for many people, there's other people on your podcast, but for many people, similar to myself, I came to this very late in my life. I was about 45. I'm 52 now, and I worked in advertising for about 25 years. So when I in college and after I left college, and when I hit 40, I knew I really needed to discover and find a way out of the industry. I mean, I had felt it coming before then, but the work was really beginning to become unsustainable for me. And it was taking more self care, more resources, more finances. I was a freelancer. So I was always working jobs, and I could take time off, but I would work a job and then it would just take me that much more time to recover from the job. And I thought, this is not sustainable to do anymore. And so I really felt like I needed to find a way, at least out of the industry by the time I was 50. And I found my way out around 45. And so, um, you know, the thing is that Reiki began to come into my life when my dad started declining around that age. I was about 40. He started declining with Lewy body and Parkinson's, and it was his death that really brought Reiki to me. And I took a class, kind of like with my dad's death, like these subconscious bubbles started to come up in my life, like books. And I had had chronic illness, probably due to the fact that even though I adored advertising and it was great for me in a lot of ways in my life, I think it was a big stressor on my body. So I had a lot of gut issues and chronic illness. And I remember one of my practitioners had suggested to try Reiki, and I never pursued that, for self care.
Mm-hmm.
And so when my dad started to decline, that subconscious bubble kind of floated up in my brain. And I thought, oh, I'm going to go and do this. So I did a Reiki training level 1 for my own benefit and self care. And during those trainings, you work on other individuals, you trade, practice. And I could feel that my body was really happy, but people that I was working, I was like, they're like, your body is so happy. And it was so happy.
Wow.
And so then I just really started having this overwhelming sense that I was supposed to be doing something with this.
Mm.
And yes, I mean, I didn't know that I was going to become a practitioner, but um and so really my father's death brought the Reiki to me, and then I felt called into becoming a practitioner. And my dad was always this individual who really encouraged people to become their authentic self and wanted them to really live in their authenticity. And I felt like, so really I do this work out of a way to live my dad's legacy and to really be able to spread the gifts of Reiki to the wider world, because I felt really called to do that. And that has brought a lot of purpose and meaning to my life, which, working with highly sensitive people is like one of the top things. Like, I find working with highly sensitive individuals that if they don't have a purpose, even if it's on the side of their job, they have mental health issues. And so this has really helped me to live my highest purpose doing this work. So I started my private practice about 6 years ago, And I live in Minneapolis, and I joined a clinic called Wellness Minneapolis that was run by two lovely humans. And their mission is to help people run wellness businesses. And I had been a freelancer my entire life as
Right.
an advertiser, but not in wellness. And so they really came alongside me and taught me how to kind of have a good session, what that looks like, how to give really consistent and like to give good care in a consistent way, or what good care looks like, and making sure that people feel really held in terms of how a not the session, but how like start to finish, how it unfolds and how people
Mm-hmm.
can feel, like giving aftercare recommendations, these type of things. um, and so it was during that time that I became aware of what a highly sensitive person is, through this clinic, through one of the owners hosting about being highly sensitive. And it was something I had heard about, but is not something I ever went down the rabbit hole with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did the Google thing and I found Elaine Aron's quiz and I took that, but it was really the quiz that Julie B. Ellen had on her
Oh yeah.
website.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that and I answered all the questions yes, and I actually like hesitated and answered the last question no, because I was like, I don't even know what this means if I answer all the questions yes. And
Right.
then I was like, wow. So I then kind of instantly texted or emailed my mom and said, I just took this quiz, because what happened was that just even taking the quiz made all these things come together for me from my childhood forward, about why things had happened in my life a certain way, why I had maybe quote unquote failed in certain ways that I felt like hadn't worked out. And then, of course, I just started this kind of deep dive into the traits of what it means to be highly sensitive. Um, and then I guess I had the good fortune, really, in some way, to be asked by one of my clients in the first year and a half that I was doing Reiki to come alongside her and support her with a group. And I was like, who am I to do this? But I decided to do it, to go to take my own deep dive into research, because I love research. And it's honestly the best thing I've done. I'm still running support series groups once a month over a 6-month period for groups of cohorts of people. And it's been really transformative for me and for other individuals, from them to learn that, just like you're supporting people, like it really helps them
Mm-hmm.
to let go of shame and guilt and to come into
Yeah.
their power and to understand that they have tools and that they actually have some say in
Mm-hmm.
how their life can feel. It's a game changer, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. It really is a game changer
So,
to have that
yeah,
perspective and those resources.
yeah, yeah. So that's my story.
I love it that one piece led to the other piece to the other piece. You're just following that memory or that sense of, oh,
Mm,
energy work or Reiki is something that could support me. And then it led you to realizing that you're highly sensitive, and that led to deeper insights. I've heard that from other folks where when they take the self test, it is a point of reflection. You start putting the puzzle pieces together. Like, oh, it's this is connected to my sensitivity, and so is this, and oh, now I'm seeing everything through a new lens.
yeah,
It's a very transformative process.
it sure is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, it hasn't, I have to go back and look. I haven't been looking at Julie Bielen's site most recently, but she's really supporting women now in
Hmm.
that late stage of coming into autism. And,
Yeah.
that quiz has shifted a bit, and it doesn't as align as much for me, but I certainly tell
Hmm.
my clients about it.
Hmm.
I think she's doing amazing work and really helping women who are coming into that knowledge in their late stages of their life. So
Yeah.
yay for that resource.
Which is so exciting because there's not a lot of resources
There are
available.
not.
There's not. We need so much more. So, I mean, we really have to, I mean, I'm glad we're having these types of
Yeah.
conversations, right? Just to spread that
Yeah.
information and the
Yeah.
awareness. Because I've had people
It's a
come to me
new
like,
frontier.
it's a new frontier, right? But even people in their 60s and 70s reach out and say, just discovered this about myself, and I really wish I had known sooner. Everything would have been different. How I thought about myself, how I lived my life.
I
So,
know. Yeah. I just had
yes.
two 60-year-olds in my highly sensitive group that went
Mm-hmm.
through, and we just ended in March. And I reassured both of them. I'm like, there's individuals your age in this group, because it's
Yes.
not always the case. Because they were
Mm-hmm.
both kind of hesitant. And I was like, no, no, it's okay. I'm like,
Yeah.
the more you know about yourself, the better.
Never too late.
Never too late. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. for sure.
Yes. And so it
Yeah,
sounds like, Reiki, that coming into your life has been, I mean, it's really shifted your whole life, it sounds like.
absolutely.
Yes, it's pretty
Absolutely.
incredible. And it sounds like it continues to be a great resource for you personally, but also you're spreading it to others in community spaces. I'm curious, how are you finding that sense of balance and calm as an HSP in addition to Reiki? I'd love to hear more about what helps you
Yeah, yeah.
feel
So
supported.
one thing that I have been doing recently since
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic is creating art. And I
Mm,
discovered, I'm going to show some art, but I discovered
great.
slow stitching during the
Slow
pandemic
stitching.
from my fellow artist Emma Freeman over at Deep Rooted Healing. And
Mm,
here I can hold up another piece too that I'll go to the thrift store. Like this is like an Italian linen shirt that's kind
mm,
of chartreuse green. And then I have a circle stitched on it, a gray circle, and it's
mm-hmm.
on a stick. So in answer to your question, like definitely taking walks with my furry family member is one way that I calm, and taking long walks are in my neighborhood. And then I'll find these sticks. And
Mm,
so the slow stitching is really just like, it's like letting go of perfection. It's
yes.
it's using straight stitch. I mean, this is called seed stitch, so it's a sporadic use of straight stitches,
Hmm.
but it's really about letting go of perfection. And for those of you who are listening, like, this is multiple layers of fabric draped over a stick, and then I stitch it together, and it has some frayed edges. And honestly,
Mm,
April, I started this, and Emma, who was teaching me, like had all these things that were frayed. I mean, I worked in advertising, and everything had to be tight and perfect. And so
right.
this was really an unwinding for myself
Mm,
of
mm-hmm.
becoming okay with having these frayed edges and letting go. And actually, Emma
Yes.
talked about the back. You have to look at the back. She's like, that's
I
where
was
the story
curious.
really is.
Yes, that's where it is. I was curious about the back.
Yeah, she's like, I want to show the back. She's like, thinks it's really
Yeah, and
important,
you
but
can
not
see
because
all the
she's,
the threads and everything.
yeah, because it's
Oh,
the
I love that.
story
It's
of
a story.
the
Hmm.
story of the stitches and the journey of the stitches, right?
Hmm.
So,
That's
um,
beautiful.
so, another way that um I calm and comfort is to come into connection with other like-minded individuals or within community
Mm,
that
mm-hmm.
are highly sensitive. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm showing my artwork at a coffee shop and then also at the local library
Mm,
because I'm also teaching individuals or wanting to teach, classes about this and letting people know that they can use art as a way to
yes.
basically I do the stitching because it helps me metabolize emotions that I
Mm,
don't know that I have words for, right? I can't find words for
yes.
them always, but
Mm-hmm.
somehow the stitching helps me to get that up and out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I stitch. And when I've taught classes, people have said the same, as long as they're, I'm teaching to unwind and not to feel
Mm-hmm.
like it's not about the producing, it's about the
Right.
creating.
Mm,
And there's no way specific way that creation has to come to be. It doesn't have to be anything specific. It's really about what you were naming previously of like really following that niggle or that intuition of like where's the next stitch or what's the next
yes.
stitch like, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
teaching us to be present. It's also teaching us to listen to what's coming to us
Yeah, I
because
love
I
that.
feel like it's for sure as highly sensitive individuals and just as humans in general that staying present and listening deeply is very healing
It
because
is.
we're often taken out of our bodies, especially as highly sensitive individuals, because we feel so deeply. We spend so much time out of our bodies. I spent decades out of my body.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Same.
reality, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a way to become embodied. And so, one of those communities, that I have become in collaboration with is the studio where I have my private practice, which is a yoga studio in Minneapolis called Yes Yoga. And I just really deeply value that community because it's a community that's really intentional. People are embodied, and it's a supportive community that's really just wanting to commit to being intentional and embodied in their life. And that has really helped me in my own practice, but also in my own life.
Mm-hmm.
And I've now had this beautiful unfolding of seeing clients, and then I'll go take like a yin or restorative yoga class and then come back and see clients. And so it's been this
Right.
really beautiful experience of like, whoa, this is what work can be. It can be like rest and work
Mm.
and work and rest. And I
Mhm.
didn't really have that opportunity before, but it's been a lovely thing to experience in my body to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, just finding that balance and being able to meet your
mm,
needs as they come up, not needing to push, push, push. You mentioned the word embodied a few times, and for folks who maybe don't understand what that
mm.
means, I wonder if you could just give us a little sense. What does it mean to be
Yeah. Oh
embodied?
gosh, what does it mean to be embodied? Okay, I should be able to answer that right off the top, but I think it just means, you know, feeling, sensing in being in our bodies. Like we've sometimes been told to, like, I know sometimes when I go to yes and the it's trauma informed. And so this instructor will be asking us to look around the room and find things that we see, things that we smell, things that we taste, maybe touching something, feeling something. So it's really being present in the body
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that we're present in the body and not
Yeah,
just in our head, right? Maybe you
right.
can refine that, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, I know for myself when I was not embodied, I think for myself, that was a lot of why I didn't know how to feel, because I
Mm-hmm.
have definitely learned as an energy worker that if you're not embodied, if you're not in your body, then there's no way you can tell what's yours and what's somebody else's.
Absolutely true.
You need to be in your present in your body to be able to have discernment.
Mm-hmm. It's so true because if you don't know what you're feeling, how will you know if this is
Yeah.
yours or someone else's?
Yes.
And then losing access, not just to feeling and sensation, but also intuition and those other
Yes.
internal forces that guide us as sensitive people. Instead, we're looking outside of ourselves and getting misled. That
Yeah.
is, it
Yeah.
can get a little dangerous.
Oh, yes, of course it can.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I mean, it can be life-threatening for some people because
Mm-hmm.
people, I mean, will end up abusing drugs and alcohol
Mm-hmm.
and all these things because they just really can't find their way back to
Yeah.
present moment and being in the body. And so,
Yeah.
or
It's
eating
true.
disorders, harmful
Mm-hmm.
things, right? A lot of
Right.
self-sabotaging.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
self-sabotaging and also just missing the body's cues. I think,
Yes, for
one of the
sure.
my favorite things about being sensitive is that I notice when my body needs something
Mm.
long before it's yelling at me. I'm just like, oh, there's a little something. Let me tend to that. And that's such a gift to be able to know
Yeah.
what I need and when I need it. Yeah. And it
Yeah.
seems like a lot of what you're talking about is very tactile. It's, yeah,
Mm.
being embodied, using your hands, just really coming into the present moment. Such a healing practice, especially if
Yeah.
you've been maybe disconnected from yourself,
Yeah.
just to come back in and slow down and just be in the moment.
Yeah, I think one other thing that I can say just for listeners, because this
Mm-hmm.
is something you can do at home if you have a
Mm.
bathtub, or you can use a little small tub with your feet. But I've definitely learned, as a practitioner, being an energy worker, taking Epsom salt baths is so
Ooh,
soothing to the nervous
yes.
system, to our adrenals. And what I really see is that that really helps when I see clients to, it helps them to continue. So, like, if we go out in the world and we take on the energetic yuck, taking an
Mm.
Epsom salt bath is one way to really help
Mm.
to move that energy off of us or through us in a way that we can do at home at a low cost. So,
Mm-hmm.
as HSPs, we're often sensitive to chemicals and things. So I just would say, Epsom salts are a form of magnesium. So it's something that's relaxing to the body, and it can be done before bed. It can be 20 minutes or longer, but I think just make sure you're buying Epsom salts that don't have chemicalized fragrance in them, because it
Mm-hmm.
can be irritating to the skin. But other than that, it's a pretty easy and simple process. So,
Mm-hmm.
like one to two cups or
Right.
so in the bath is great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite ways to just to self-care after a client day. It's just get into the salt bath, just let it
Yeah.
all go. And
Yeah.
it is so calming. I sleep so well after
Yes.
an Epsom salt bath.
Yes.
Yeah, one of my
Agreed. Yeah.
favorites. And it's a good
Yeah.
reminder that something as simple as that, going to the drugstore, buying just a basic bag of Epsom, nothing fancy,
Right.
and that can be just a really powerful form of self-care that you
Yeah.
can do at home.
Yeah. It's very affordable. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I love
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
So let's say for folks who maybe aren't familiar, we've talked about Reiki and how important that is for
Hmm.
you personally
Hmm.
and in your work.
Hmm.
But there are probably some folks listening that don't know what that is. They've never maybe been to a Reiki session. Could you describe a little bit more about what that looks like or what's happening in a session?
Sure, sure. So what's happening in a session is that, um, well, I think the first thing is to let you know that
Mm-hmm.
every practitioner is different.
Mm.
And I basically see myself, I've really, developed the style of the way I work. I in the same way I came into the Reiki. So I've really been guided in my work, and I was trained, but I've also just allowed myself to be guided. And so I see myself kind of working on four different levels with the
Mm-hmm.
Reiki during a session for an individual. And so at the most basic level, I don't even know that is basic. Let's say the most human level, I think. The most human level, Reiki. Well, let me say this first, because I think this is an important thing for anyone who has not maybe met Reiki or energy work. I want to describe the fact that energy work is an umbrella, and that Reiki is a form of energy work.
Great.
Healing touch is a form of energy work. Even acupuncture has some um, aspects of energy work. And so energy work is the bigger umbrella. And then Reiki is the form of energy work that's being
Mm-hmm.
done. Because I can see that being very confusing. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know about these things until I became a practitioner myself. And so I'm kind of using Reiki and energy work interchangeably, because Reiki is a form of energy work, but Reiki is a type of energy work that originates in Japan. And there's other types of Reiki even. And then healing touch is a certified, I'm not certified in that, but you can be certified through um, accredited programs. And then you can work within the hospitals with that type of energy healing. So I mean, I call myself as Reiki practitioner because that's what I was trained in. So, at the most human level, what I really see Reiki coming alongside individuals with is deep restorative rest, which many of us need. Um, on the second level, I see individuals that the energy work comes alongside them on a physical level, a physical body level. So, I'm calming the individual's nervous system. I am helping alleviate any physical pain that they've named by helping to balance their physical and energetic system. The third way, or the third level that I'm seeing that I can work with an individual, and this is all kind of happening within one session normally, is the energetic level. So I'm opening the chakras or the energy centers, which I normally see at every joint. And then there's also that chakra center, the seven chakras, right?
Mm-hmm.
Through the center of the body. And so, in opening these chakra centers and making sure that they're not blocked, then we begin to come into more balance, and we can feel more calm, and we can feel more centered. And as I've worked, I just see energy coming off in layers, and I'm a conduit. So I'm allowing, the minute I touch a client, energy is allowed to move through me. So if somebody is, I can tell how much work people are doing on themselves and how they care for themselves. Because if I touch them and a ton of things start flying off, I know they've been doing their work. Right.
Right.
And so that's going through me. And then I just send it out my feet into the earth. And so, you know, the body's or the soul's not going to really take things off that the individual can't handle. Right. So it's a very
Mm-hmm.
gentle form. But I do see that energy comes in layers, comes off in layers. And so then sometimes even within the session, a layer will come off and then something else is revealed, right?
Oh, right. Something underneath.
Yes, be
Okay.
revealed. So the fourth level, I would say, is more of a soul or a spiritual level. And that's kind of where I'm basically being an energy coach, or I am working with the soul, and it's a time where I've been given the gift of channeling through my dad's death as well, and mediumship. And so sometimes the body's very direct, or the soul's very direct, or the universe is very direct about something that this individual can do to help move them in their life, and
Mm.
in a way like away from harm. Or so I'll ask people what their intention is in the beginning. We have a conversation, so people can name things that they want to bring in or let go of.
Mm-hmm.
And I do find often, even if people tell me stories about what they're trying to let go of something, it brings it directly to the surface energetically, and then we can move it out and let it go. And that can be really helpful for individuals, even if it's old stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so that that sharing, that intuitive sharing that I hear, I will share that at the end of the session. And so
Mm-hmm.
I now kind of just knew this year I have two different sessions. I have more of a channeled session that is more of a conversational session. And the session I'm speaking about now is more of a silent session. I really create a sanctuary of silence and allow deep rest. And then we have that conversation at the end, and I'm sharing what's coming through. Um, One other thing, just because you work as a therapist, that this didn't come to me until like maybe 3 years into my practice, but it's been really fascinating to see individuals. Many of my clients do have therapists, and they've done a lot of work in therapy. And sometimes clients will be on the table, and I'll sometimes ask, because sometimes the energy won't move, and I just have to
Right.
ask a question to get it to shift.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say, well, I'm enjoying this coming up, and sometimes clients will say, well, I thought I was done with that. And so what I have seen is that there are things in people's energetic fabrics, tapestry, field, that has not been cleared, but they've talked through it and they think it's done. And so
Yeah.
then when I clear it, then they really come through the complete cycle, and trauma or whatever it is complete, and they
Mm-hmm.
don't have that again. And if they do, I tell them that usually shows up in your dream life or other things. If you start
Mm-hmm.
obsessing about it, then that means that energy's back. And then maybe we have to take other layers off. Maybe that's
Right.
triggered something else that we have to then go, deeper. And so
Mm-hmm.
every practitioner works differently. I personally sell packages, and I encourage people to do that, and I incentivize that because I want to go deep with people, and I
Yeah.
see the best results when people. So I have like sessions for a package of 4, and I see people make really astounding leaps and bounds, honestly, in 4 sessions, that you
Mm-hmm.
can completely retrain somebody's nervous system, not for good, right? But for that period of their life. And
Right.
then if some big thing happens, then, the nervous system sometimes has to be coached back into that
Mm-hmm.
space. But the body much more recognizes it if it's been coached into that
Yes.
space of like,
Right. It's
hey,
primed.
yeah, it's like, I know what I'm doing. I know what we
Right.
do here.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. It's such
Yeah.
important. I often encourage my clients to, do some type of bodywork somatic healing in addition to our talk therapy, because I mean, I'm weaving in some somatic work, but not to the point that a practitioner could, an energy healer or a somatic experiencing practitioner, a craniosacral therapist, someone who can work physically with the energy in the nervous system, because we can only do so much through language. A lot of things are stored somatically, energetically. And so I'm
Agreed.
not surprised to hear that you're seeing that in your work, where you're
Yeah.
helping go and take that deeper layer and help move that through. It's so
I mean,
important.
I'm mostly working in the area, the space where there are not words, right? And
Exactly,
if I
right.
am having to language it, I'm having to translate energy. Sometimes things come directly through, but
Mm-hmm.
many times it's wordless. And then, that's where I've gained more skill, is like really
Yeah.
translating energy, trusting, and
Mm-hmm.
bringing that forth, and then getting confirmation or affirmation from clients of like, yeah, you're spot on. And then that's given me more trust and more confidence to trust what's coming through.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, just
yeah.
really listening. And you talked
Mhm.
about, it sounds like there's a lot of benefits, but just to recap a few, and I want to see if there's more,
Yeah,
just put words to
sure,
it. So it sounds like,
sure.
energy work in general, potentially Reiki or healing touch or other work. It's really great for the nervous system as a sensitive
Mhm.
person who's more easily overwhelmed, overstimulated, more impacted by trauma or emotional distress. But also, just sounds like, just allowing the body to rest and to unwind and heal physically, energetically, and also spiritually. Like you're healing at every
Yeah.
level. I'm
Yep.
just wondering, are there other benefits we haven't named to doing this type of work?
Let's see, other benefits that we haven't named. I think one of the things that, just in terms of specifically for HSPs, I
Mm-hmm.
think that what I see is, so mostly the individuals that are called into my room are individuals that are pretty empathic, meaning we feel the collective, we're feeling other
Yeah.
people's energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say HSPs are that people, and then some people are even more beyond that, right? And can
Mm-hmm.
really feel the collective energy. And so individuals that are highly sensitive and empathic, when they come into the room, the energy work, the Reiki work really kind of meets them where they're at, where live internally and where we kind of thrive out of, it's the place that many of us feel shut down about in the world. And the Reiki witnesses that. And what I see is that people come and they feel so seen and witnessed. And some people are brought to tears because they've never felt like they've been seen in this way. And
Mm-hmm.
they feel really safe and held. And, or people will say, I've never talked about this with anyone. I'm like, well, you can talk about it here because it's not something that we feel safe talking about in the wider world. Um, and I also see that this energy work really helps individuals. Why I love doing it is it really helps individuals to come into their authentic selves. So ideally, optimally, we're working in through, through multiple sessions because energy comes off in layers. And there is the rare client who can come to me and I can get to their authentic energy in one session, but that client's doing a lot of things outside of my room.
Mm-hmm.
And so, within the second or third session, oftentimes I can get individuals kind of in their authentic energy.
Yeah.
And even within the first session, people feel lighter, they feel more clear.
Mm.
Um, because also what we see is that what I see continually is that any kind of chronic stress really shuts that intuition down, that third eye.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the clients that, people come to me, they don't feel clear, they feel lost, they'll feel apathetic, they can't make decisions anymore, they don't know who they are. They may have lost their luster to life. And most of the time I just say to them, hey, friend, you're highly sensitive like I am. You've taken on a lot of other people's stories and you're wearing those stories so you don't even know who you are anymore because you think this is your story and it's not your story. These are other people's stories and we just have to move this out of the way so that you can begin to live in your own authentic self and be able to find your glimmer and your authentic light again so that you can live
Mm-hmm.
your purpose rather than living out of whatever energy's on top of your authentic energy, right?
So that makes sense that when you're saying you help bring people back into their authentic self, it's just taking off all the things they've absorbed from other people, from the world that aren't theirs. Like, oh, and
Yeah.
see yourself again.
Yeah, almost like taking off clothes or like
You're right.
organza, like layers of like this, like
Mm-hmm.
and then it becomes revealed, the authentic energy becomes revealed and then people can feel much more at ease and they can make decisions clearly again. They know who they are, they find their purpose. They're like, "Oh, yeah, this is what it feels like to be me." Because we forget what it feels like to be
Yeah.
me or ourselves,
We
right?
do. Well, when we've been living
Yeah.
a certain way for so long, whether it be living with that lackluster energy or a health issue, it becomes normal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we forget who we were or who we
We
could
do.
be.
We do
Yeah.
forget. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this helps
So,
them find themselves again.
yeah. Yeah. So it can be a pretty
Yeah.
extraordinary transformation for individuals.
Yes. I mean, I felt it myself. I work with a body worker and we do a mixture of kind of energy, somatic experiencing, some craniosacral, and when I'm done with a session, I feel like a kid. I'm so joyful and
Yeah.
free, and I'm like, who am I? Like it's
Right?
just, but
Yes.
there's that authenticity
Mm.
there that I'm not bogged
Yeah.
down anymore,
That's
and
right.
it's phenomenal. And I
It is
do, when you
phenomenal.
said letting the layers come off, like I literally will feel energy just flowing out of my head, like back to the earth,
Yeah.
and
Well,
it
and
just
one thing
pours off.
I think it's one thing that I always tell clients when they come, if it's been the
Mm-hmm.
first time that, I
Mm-hmm.
say, this work, like any type of work is going to like you're going to maybe see things, hear things, like I call it seeing things across your mind screen. I said if I as I'm bringing things off, taking things off,
Mm-hmm.
you may be reliving this, and I'm like, that's
Mm-hmm.
completely normal. And emotions, like this can bring a lot of emotions
Oh
up.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so it's like it's really, we want it up and out because it's been shoved down. We do not want it to like go back down, right? We want to bring it
Yeah.
up and out, so it has, oftentimes clients are like reliving things on the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely get a lot of visuals and
Yeah.
emotions coming, and sometimes just
Yeah.
spontaneously.
That's right.
This is the last session. I just think I just like laughed out loud, or some sound just came out, and I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know what that was, but I'm letting it go.
Yes.
Just let
Yeah.
it be. Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
beautiful.
It's a very organic process, but also,
It
and the
is.
body
Yeah.
is so wise, right? Like I'm not
Yes.
manipulating, or I mean, I can be encouraging, but
Mm-hmm.
the body's just doing what it's doing. Like there's a
That's it.
rhyme and a rhythm and a wisdom to it that's just so
Mm-hmm.
amazing to witness.
So, Lynn, I'm curious when the first time you experienced energy work is. I know you talked about being introduced to it around the time that your father was passing, but I'm just wondering if you could share more about that
Yeah,
story.
yeah. I loved this question so much when I read this question because it's kind of so the name of my business is Full Circle of Love because when my dad died, I'm a creative person and I did the what are they called? Like the picture boards for my dad's service.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they have an official name, but um, I've been a long time stuffer of my emotions, and I kind of knew it might make me sick. My dad's death might really like give
Yeah.
me an autoimmune immune disease if I didn't work through it. And so
Yeah.
I decided for a year to send, I have a small family, so I would make a photo card and send it once a month
Mm.
as a way to touch the grief. And I did that for like about a year. And one
Mm.
of the takeaways from that was just really learning that my dad kind of taught me to come back to love, or taught our family to come back to love. And that
Mm.
that can be a really profound foundation, even when there's been hard things, challenges, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I guess I'm saying that. So my brother helped me kind of think of a name because, I don't know if you've ever tried to get a domain, but things like start evaporating and things were evaporating. So
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, he's like, well,
Yeah.
how about Full Circle of Love? So that's the name of my company, LLC. But
Mm.
why I'm saying that is because like this really is full circle, right? So
Yeah.
the first time I actually had energy work done was on my wedding day because
Oh.
I was 28 and I am married the oldest grandchild in a family of 10 grandchildren. And my
Mm.
husband has a huge family. And I wanted a smaller wedding. And we ended up with a bigger wedding. And
Mm-hmm.
basically, what happened is I just did not know anything about being highly sensitive. I did not
Yeah.
know anything about the trait, and I didn't set myself up properly for success because I didn't know
Sure.
what I needed.
Right.
And we had we had a wedding. It wasn't huge, but it was like, I think it was about 100 people in the yard. And we wanted to have a sunset wedding, which worked out beautifully, honestly. But what that meant is that we ended up scheduling dinner before the service. And I
Mm.
am really blood sugar sensitive. And I was so anxious that I couldn't eat. I
Mm.
finally got some fruit down, but basically, this is, I call it short circuiting, but basically my body like short circuited on me and I couldn't like stand up anymore.
Oh, wow.
And then people are coaching me, like, well, maybe you're gonna have to sit in a chair. And I was like, I don't want to sit in a chair. Like, and my husband's aunt came over to me. I was literally like in a lazy boy in the living room, like just like trying to figure out what to do. The service was
Sure.
about ready to start in the yard.
Mm-hmm.
And she just came over and laid her hand on me. And my body literally went like, wow. And it was just like within about 5 to 10 minutes, I came congruent and I just stood
Wow.
up and I said, I want to get this over with. I walked out of the door, completed the service, and I was just like, I want to be done with this. Like,
Yeah.
I just was overwhelmed by how much love there was and just having so many people in the space. It was like, I'm a
Mm-hmm.
Leo. I'm supposed to want to be on the stage. I did not
Right.
want to be on the stage. Like
Right.
that was, and so then I was talking to um the aunt later and I just said, what did you do? She goes,
Yeah.
oh, I was doing healing touch on you, and it's like I was like, whoa. And I literally really didn't have energy work again until this time when my dad started dying.
Wow.
That's not something that I just didn't think about. It. I was 28, I was living in New York City, and then we
Sure.
moved, and I mean, all these things,
Right.
and I hadn't really. But when Reiki came to my life again, I was like, whoa, this is a really
Yeah.
big piece of the puzzle that's been missing, is
Mm-hmm.
knowing and having awareness about my energy body and taking care of my energy body.
Yes.
Because I recognized at that time what a huge part of my life that was, and that
Mm-hmm.
really was a big part of why I was having so many health issues, is because I wasn't listening to that. That was the part of me, like you're saying, that the subtle cues of like, hey,
Yeah.
you're overriding all the systems,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so then this like
Yes.
short circuiting happened kind of. So it was really a an amazing gift, honestly, that was given to me.
Yes.
Little did I know that I was going to come back around and become a practitioner. I would have never guessed that in a million years. But
Well, it's quite a pivot from what you were doing in marketing.
oh yes, yeah, for sure,
But
for
I mean,
sure.
I really love that you have this history with it and at this very important moment. And you talked about, being surrounded by love. I think it's an important reminder that it doesn't matter what the energy is, it can be positive and it can still really overwhelm us as HSPs,
Yes.
especially if
Oh, for
you're
sure.
also empathic.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so,
definitely good, and the good and the challenging can feel so similar, right? In terms of
oh,
overwhelm.
so similar.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about, what energy work can support you with, but I do want to check in and see if you have any thoughts on, are there times where you should not do energy
Oh yeah,
work?
contraindicated. So
Yeah.
I can't think of a lot of reasons
Okay.
that the energy work would be contraindicated, but one that I've seen personally as a practitioner, because every practitioner is different, right?
Hmm.
So what I've witnessed is that I have, I've had some lovely humans come to me that I personally have really wanted to help, and it hasn't been helpful for them. And those individuals are the individuals who maybe have chronic fatigue or something where there's a lot of illness that's going on in multiple systems.
Mm,
And
yeah.
energy work is potentially or supposedly very gentle, but what I found is that sometimes these individuals get flooded, and then it feels okay at the time when we're working, and then they go home and they have like this huge like kind of collapse or like
Hmm.
energy crisis, and I feel really bad about it. So I think that energy work could be okay for some of these individuals, but at least the way I work, I don't know, the energy comes through potently or something. I don't always have the controls for that.
Hmm.
Um, that's been my experience. And so if somebody comes to me with a lot of not layered trauma, but just like if it's showing up in so many systems, like
Right.
somebody who has POTS or somebody who has chronic fatigue and
Yep.
it's hitting all the systems, it's like
Hmm.
it's too much for their system.
Hmm.
They have to get a little bit stronger, I think,
Hmm.
before we can. I think it's just literally running too much energy through them,
Yeah.
that
Makes
it's just like
sense.
the system kind of goes haywire and goes like, I don't know what to do with this, right? So it ends up not being helpful. It ends up being more of a an irritant for them,
Hmm.
honestly.
Makes sense, and you don't want to overwhelm the system. And
Yes,
sometimes you
yes.
can flood it and it's not helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Makes a
So
little sense.
yeah.
Well, as we start to wrap up here, I'm wondering if there is a message you could share with HSP listeners who are maybe feeling stuck or imbalanced, or maybe that saturated feeling we've alluded to. What would that message be?
Yeah, I'm really encouraging people to continue to find ways to be in their body, to be
Hmm.
embodied, right? To find ways to have the sensory um, senses alive in our body and being aware of them. As we talked about, like we can only feel our emotions or work through our emotions when we're in our body. And we need to be in our body to own and to be in our authentic energy. And so I would really encourage people to be finding ways, and really the way the world is working these days, there are so many options now. Like this is really coming online in full
Hmm.
force, which is so beautiful to see. And there's so
Hmm.
much integration and so many things that are kind of cross pollinating in a way that is
Hmm.
really beautiful to see. And so I'm really encouraging individuals to find spaces where they can find support about gently finding ways to be in their body and to find rest. Um, because the truth is that as highly sensitive individuals, we are the guides, we're the seers in this world. We are paving the way for a better future. And so, my deepest wish and hope, which is why I'm passionate about the work I do, is to have people be in their authenticity. I
Yeah.
want people who are highly sensitive to be in their bodies and sharing their gifts and in their authentic energy, because that is how they shine the brightest. And it's the only way they can share their own unique gifts is if they're in their body and turned on. And so I'm
Hmm.
just really encouraging people to continue to commit to shining brightly. And it doesn't have to be pushed or forced. It can be a very gentle unfolding, but a commitment to yourself. It's just simply a
Yeah.
commitment to yourself,
I love
right?
that.
And
That's
to
so
your
beautiful.
authenticity.
Hmm.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, I love that so much because it's true. We are the seers and the feelers, the emotional leaders, and it's really important that we take care of ourselves and we set down what other people are are feeling or what they've told us we should be feeling and just say,
Yeah.
let's come back to self and let's
Hmm.
come back to that
Hmm.
authenticity. And we have so much to give from that
Yeah.
place.
Agreed.
of
Agreed.
of embodiment and presence. Yeah. Well, Lynn, thank you so much for everything you shared today. I love this
Yeah.
conversation.
Oh,
I'll make
good.
sure I share all the resources that you offer in the show notes for folks. And you do
Great.
offer distance Reiki and intuitive reading
Mhm.
sessions. So I'm wondering if you could
Yes.
share with folks a little bit more about that if they're interested.
Yeah, yeah. So the distance session honestly came to me kind of during the pandemic because I really didn't want to be cut off from clients. And I
Yeah.
literally kind of just asked the universe to come alongside me and, like, hey, how do I do this? So I went back to my neighbors who helped me develop my in-person session and practice with them. And um, a kind of a style came through. And so that's what I do to this day. And so that distance session is kind of a distance Reiki and intuitive reading because it allows the healing to happen from anywhere in the world. And it sounds hard to believe that it can happen, but really I'm just, energy's everywhere. And so I'm just tuning in. And so I guide people through a meditation and we align our energies. And that's kind of like an energetic body scan. And then as we go through the session, I'm asking the body to show me affirmations. And I use those kind of like my hands in the Reiki room and using those affirmations to come back to. And people still go into this space of kind of like wake or sleep like they would in person.
Mm,
And sometimes people let go of even more things at home because they're in the safety of their own home and the
mm-hmm.
body feels very safe. And so even more can leave. But I would say these kind of intuitive reading sessions or distance sessions really allow individuals to also partake in any kind of aha or insight moments because it's more of a conversational style. Or,
Mm,
somebody can choose not to be conversing with me, but we can be having a dialogue. And so that universal guidance, or if individuals are wanting to connect with a loved one who's, passed, that is something that we can bring in because I do have some mediumship
mm,
capabilities. And so there's really a connection or a comfort of a container that allows loved ones to come through or spirit guides and opens this opportunity for universal messages to come
mm,
through in these sessions, along with the healing and the balance and harmony and clearing of energy and clarity. So there's all these things that are happening at one time. And so I do the sessions in the US via phone usually because I'm
mm-hmm.
more of an auditory person. I'll
Mm-hmm.
use Zoom and use the audio if somebody's out of the country or
Mm-hmm.
it's somewhere that they can't use their phone. So yeah,
Yeah, it sounds like such a rich resource where, so much could happen, like you're saying, in the
yeah,
comfort of home. I know with
yes,
my clients, I also work by distance, so they like being at home and they feel comfortable and things can just unfold, which
hmm
is really
hmm
beautiful. And you're right, you might not expect it, but a lot is possible.
yeah,
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 sounds like a beautiful
yeah.
resource. Well, Lynn, thank you
Thank
again
you,
so much for being here
thank
today.
you.
This was
My pleasure.
amazing. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, April.